Good morning from Miami. This is Sarah Fortes. I'm the campus director of MIU City University, Miami, and I welcome everybody for participating to our first open class ever. Today, our speaker is Professor Cheli Cerra, and she will discuss with us the keys to exceptional leadership in education. Welcome, Professor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah, for having me. I'm very excited. First live class.
It's an honor. So Professor Cheli Cerra, she has been a leader in education for more than 20 years, and she's managed teams of 150 people and more here in Miami-Dade County, right?
Yes, that's correct.
That's nice and very
Yes.
interesting. So let's dive into the topic right away, if you're ready.
Absolutely, absolutely. But before we do, I want to give a little bit of a background on leadership and how it was over 20 years ago and how it is today. And I want you to think about this because it's really important. And maybe some of you are still trying to make that transition. Maybe you still have bosses that are in that 20-year ago autocratic leadership, which means that I know that when I started in the school system, I started a long time ago, more than 20 years. It was more of the autocratic where it was performance and people told you, your managers that was managing, told you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and the why you had to do it. So that was a leadership back then, but today things have changed drastically. Today we are more in autonomous leadership. We want innovation, we want creativity, we want to have teams that take us beyond what we could even conceive in being able to do. So this is a topic for today.
Great. It's going to be very interesting to
Yes.
discuss this with you. So let me ask you a first question. How do you think can leader connect to their purpose?
Well, I want everybody to think about what their purpose is. What is your purpose? And how can your purpose be aligned with leadership? I want you to think of this because your purpose is your brand. It's the why. It really differentiates you as your strengths, the reasons why you do things, and it is aligned to your values.
Right. I was about to say it's connected to values, right?
Yes, it's totally aligned to your values. And many times in organizations, I know that in the school districts and school systems and in schools, we have our core mission, we have our values, we have all these statements, and many times we put them all around the school, but sometimes we don't even know what that is. So what's very important is we have to take a moment and we need to understand what is our purpose, what is our values, what is our why. Why do we want to show up and be a leader every single day? So important.
And why is that so important in the job?
It's very important because if you have an impact and you're aligned with your why and your leadership and you know in the direction that you're going, then as you're hiring your teams, as you're working with your teams, you're making sure that each and every individual is also aligned with their purpose, and together you align everything within the organization.
And how can an individual purpose benefit the organization?
Well, it's a great question that you asked because if my value is not aligned, maybe with someone else's or with the organizations, then I have to take a moment and I have to think about my why. Why am I working here, right? Sometimes we can make changes. This has happened to me in the past when I was put into a school that really needed to be totally overhauled, and we had to make a lot of changes. And we brought in outside consultants to really look at the entire framework of the purpose of the organization, the mission, the values of everyone. But it's important, Sarah, because if we aren't aligned, then there's going to be a lot of disconnect. You're not going to be able to have cohesion within your teams.
Right.
There's going to be a lot of negativity, and that's not the direction that we want to go. We want to be creative, innovative. We want to be authentic because it's important to lead with authenticity and your purpose.
I agree. So do you think, talking about the pandemic, the recent pandemic, we're coming out of it, do you think there has been a shift or a difference or a before and after COVID in the mindset of a worker?
Yes, yes. And I think before COVID, before 2020, many of us, right, we were working, we were going every day to work. The world is going faster. So here's the thing. Many times we don't have time to think. We don't have time to sit and reflect as to, Is our purpose aligned? Is our why as to why the organization is going in a direction aligned with our direction? And sometimes, we outgrow organizations and we have to go. So what happened during the pandemic is that we were tossed in a tailspin from one night to the next. We had to become totally virtual. And then not only that, but the world was put in a pause. So many people had time to think. And this is why a lot of people say, well, the great resignation happened because of COVID. Not really. It was already happening, but COVID kind of exacerbated it and made it go faster. And according to the US Bureau of Labor Statistics, and here's the statistic for everyone to hear, right? In the educational world, there was 10.6 million educators in 2020, and now there is 10 million. A lot of leaders have left, a lot of teachers are leaving the profession. So aligning your purpose with your why and the reasons why you do things, it's so important because we need great educational leaders to help the children become leaders themselves.
That's a good topic to talk about. How do you think leaders can navigate this different mindset from before COVID and after COVID?
Well, I think, first of all, like I said earlier, we have to understand what our purpose is, which is our brand, our why. And it's not that now you're going to leave. You have to take a moment, step back, and look at the total picture. It's like a hologram, 360 degrees, and see where you as a leader can make change in your organization. It is our charge to bring our teams together, to have these open conversations, and we're going to be giving some tips before we're off as to some of these things that can be done. Mm-hmm. But you can't lead in a vacuum. Like, you can't lead in a vacuum. You have to lead with your teams, and you have to know your strengths, you have to know your weaknesses, you have to be aligned with your why and your purpose, and then you bring in members within your organization that complement not only you, but they complement each other.
And how you think can you activate purpose within yourself and also in the organization? Give me some examples, some practical tips.
Well, one of the things that we need to do is we, as leaders, many times do not take time for ourselves.
Right.
So we need to take time, we need to set boundaries, and now we are working a little bit more than we've ever worked before. So taking downtime, totally disconnecting, going and doing something that fills your soul, fills your purpose. And one of the things that is really cool is you need to go back to when you were a child. What did you love to do as a child? Were you an artist? Were you a musician? Did you love playing sports? What was that one thing? And maybe connect as the adult that you are now and go back and have some fun, because we don't have enough fun in this world, right? And this is one of the ways to connect with our purpose, is doing this. Also, setting boundaries, because you need to take time off for you, and also having time to reflect. So important. People don't have enough time to reflect into what their goals are, what their vision is, in what direction do they want to go.
And this is more important now more than ever.
Yes, it is. It's very important today, because if we don't take a moment and really check in with who we are, we might be going in a different direction that's not aligned with our purpose.
Right.
And then it's like a domino effect, right? Everything else starts going to the wayside.
And as you said before, that's the reason also why a lot of people have shifts jobs after the pandemic, because they didn't find purpose on
Right.
what they were doing before.
Right.
And they were looking for something that they were finding their purpose, right?
Exactly. So let's talk about some examples, and let's throw in some case studies, because
Right.
This is really fun. And this is a great way for everybody to be able to see this. So if we take, let's say, an educational leader back in the year 2000, right? Let's go way back. And here you are, you're giving charge of your school, your organization, and you're leading with your teams. Basically, you tell everybody what to do, because this was the norm. You might have had your teams and you might have worked together cooperatively, but it wasn't like it is today. So here we are. Let's take a step back. Okay, in 2000, you would be given, let's say, your performance evaluation. You would be given your strategic plan as to how you had to move your organization in education. we're not meeting numbers, we're not meeting the bottom line. What we're meeting is making sure that our children are making learning gains and moving forward from these gains. So you would take your teachers, you wouldn't necessarily, right? And I'm giving you my case study because this is what I would do. You wouldn't necessarily place, like talk to your teacher and say to your teacher, so let me ask you, why do you think your children made success or not? What is it that you'd like to do? Give me some input into what grade level do you want to teach? What are your plans? Do you want to go into administration? Do you want to become a principal? What are some of these things? Basically, we just assumed if people didn't take that leadership role, that they weren't really interested in being a leader. So we would assign the grade levels to who we thought would be better, so that our grades and our learning gains would be moving forward and life would go on. Now, fast forward to today. Before I left my employment with the school system and now merged into being an adjunct professor and writing, what I started doing, because I realized that it wasn't working out anymore, right? So to give the case study of what that would look like in today's day and age, I would do surveys. So I would do surveys that were anonymous and some with names. I would then schedule my intake, let's say, end of the year interviews with my teachers, and I would bring them in and I would ask them open-ended coaching conversations. And one of those conversations, I wanted to know what was their purpose? What were their goals? Did they want to stay as a third grade teacher, or did they want to move up? Did they want to maybe go to high school? Maybe they wanted to go and get a master's degree in educational leadership. So I really needed to get to know my teacher as a person. And this is part of what we're talking today. This is part of being autonomous and allowing your teacher to help you make the decision into how they're going to serve the organization and serve themselves and serve you as that leader. So giving a buy-in to the teacher, helping them, or the employee that's there, part of your system, right? A lot of times as leaders, we don't have the time to do this, but it's critical that we take the time. And a lot of times we can do that through surveys, through having small group conversations that we can start getting to know that person. And this is all part of aligning the purpose with the organization and with each individual person, as well as that leader leading that school.
Great. So it's basically just having more connection between employer and employees, and more dialogue, conversation, communication.
Yes.
Basically.
Communication and being authentic, right? Having that courage to really have that conversation that sometimes is difficult, and say, Sarah, our school is going down in test scores. Our children, our enrollment is going down. What do you think is going on, and how can we turn it around? What are some of the things? Because if we have authentic conversations with our team members and we start really getting to the core of the problem, then together we can turn things around and we can really make a difference.
And this is what it means to go from purpose to impact and beyond.
Yes, it is. Because as you're having these conversations, you realize, like I always say, everybody has a shelf life, and I wasn't going to be a leader in my school forever, right? I had aspirations and goals, and I was going to move on. So you start then doing succession management. You start impacting those teachers that want to move up as leaders, and you start giving them more autonomy. And you're absolutely right. You start creating the impact, because one of the things that leaders forget, and this is so important today, is they have historical knowledge. And this historical knowledge, when you leave, you take it with you.
Yeah.
But if you start, this is part of mentoring. Mentoring is so important, and having coaching conversations. I believe both in coaching and in mentoring, but more so mentoring within the organization and having those coaching conversations within your teams, so that you can start building, and those teachers, bring out the best in them, bring out those leadership skills, and then have them then become the next level of leaders.
Really interesting. Let's tap into our participants. If anybody has any question for Professor Cheli, do we have any questions? Not yet. All right. So let's let's go on. Let's move on with our next questions. So how do you find your purpose, connect with it, and have the courage to live it, creating the impact that increases your leadership skills?
We are going to go into some tactical now things that we can do. So I said earlier that when you were a child, what did you love to do? Because that's a great way to connect with your purpose. So many times because we're busy, we're adults, we start on one road of our career, and then one day we wake up and we realize that we're not happy, right? We're not fulfilled. And that really says a lot, because when you're leading and you're not happy, you're not tapped into your purpose, you're not tapped into what really fuels your soul, then it's going to show up, and you're not going to be leading in, like I said, with full cylinders. You're not going to be like infusing that enthusiasm and that motivation with your teams, because you yourself aren't happy. So if we went back and we did a recap, it's taking time out for yourself, taking time out to reflect, connecting with something that really brought you happiness as a child, because usually that's the best way. And then if we bring that into the organization, I'll give you some examples of what you can do today with those in your teams. You can start having those authentic, open conversations. Many times in school systems, in schools, we don't have time, but we have to make the time. It's extremely important. I have a former colleague and a friend of mine that what she does is every Monday morning, they take time, 5 minutes, to connect to gratitude. And everybody takes a moment and they're grateful for something. And why do I say this? Because many times when we work within teams and within organizations, there might be people that maybe are not aligned as directly with us, because we're all here, we're all human, we have our strengths, we have our personalities, but maybe that person brings to the organization something that is of great value that also helps you. And if we look at that and say, I'm so grateful for this person and for what they do, then we start shifting. We start shifting and looking at that with different eyes. And gratitude really is so amazing in how things can shift within an organization. So she started gratitude and things have greatly changed. Also doing surveys to take a pulse. And I believe in anonymous surveys, because people need to really speak their mind and be authentic. And yes, as leaders, you have to have a thick skin, because sometimes you're not going to like what you hear, but that's part of being authentic with yourself. You also have to be authentic with yourself so that you can then see with different eyes and bring in those people that maybe you feel comfortable with and have those authentic conversations and say, am I really leading in this way? What do you guys think we can do so that we can start leading in a better way? How can you help me? How can you help me lead in a better way? So these are some things. Another friend and colleague, they do Gratitude Fridays instead of Mondays. So it just depends what's going to be good for your organization. Also, they showcase stories of people living on purpose. So things that you're doing to live your purpose. What are you doing? Instead of Employee of the Month, which is always fabulous, and I used to do that, how about showcasing someone who's living their purpose? Maybe they went and they climbed Mount Everest because this is something that they wanted to do all their life, and now they finally did it. So that's living your purpose. This is part of what all this is, what we're talking about today.
Very interesting. So it's very much about passion.
Yes.
Being passionate about something and transmit that passion to others.
Yes.
That you can show whenever you're passionate or know about something and people feel it.
Yes.
So basically being a leader, like what is the best tip that you could give a leader of nowadays in today's job market?
You need to take care of yourself, because when you show up, we give and give and give a lot to others. But if you can't give, if you're empty. So to reconnect with that passion, and that's why I said it's so important to go back to when you were a child. And I love the age of 10, right? Because we all did something really fun at the age of 10. Go back and tap into that. What was it that you really loved to do? Were you a musician, an artist? Did you play sports? Tap into that creativity. And let me tell you, in today's day and age, there's people that are putting together workshops on creativity for adults, because we don't do that enough. The other thing is bringing in the human experience to work, having compassion, having empathy. That is another thing that is leading in the 21st century, leading today in 2022, not the way we used to lead. And this is important because a lot of people are having trouble with mental health because they're burned out, they're overworked, they're drained,
Yes.
right? So how do we flip that? By maybe having, conversations, having time, maybe bringing somebody in from the outside to help move, the organization, either a coaching practitioner or a mental health, practitioner, to come and maybe give some topics of benefit, but not only topics of benefit, but tactical. What are the things that you can do today?
Right.
So today, I want to leave everybody with some tactics. So like I said, tap into that creativity. This weekend, go and paint, watercolor, run and go take a hike in the woods.
Yeah.
Go do something fun for yourself and disconnect. Turn off your phone. Stay away from electronics and tap into who you are. Take time to just be. Don't work. Take a whole day off, right? I try and take one day a weekend off totally, and I don't tap into electronics at all. But this is part of all of this.
Right. And so during your experience of being a leader in these past 20 plus years, what was the hardest challenge you had to overcome, and how did you overcome it as a leader?
I had a lot of challenges,
Right.
But I would say because I had a really good team and we would talk these conversations out and we would come up with a strategy to be able to overcome. So it's just unsurmountable what educational leaders have to go through today, because we are the heartbeat of the community. When there's a crisis, everybody turns to the school.
Yes.
And being a leader today in education, it takes a lot out of you. That's why I can't emphasize enough that you have to take care of yourself. And the best way to tackle challenges and to go through things and situations is to be open, honest, and authentic. And I did have a lot of challenges in the school system. I worked in the fourth largest one in the nation, so you guys can understand. We had children from all socioeconomic backgrounds. I loved my school. I had a K-8. But what I did was I surrounded myself with excellent leaders that made up my team, and we would have these conversations. We would say, I would say, this is a challenge that we have. How are we going to overcome it? And together we would overcome it. And I would then, share that with my leaders and say, this is what we're going to do. I would always plan and strategize before I jumped in with a decision. It's so important. I would put together committees with my parents. I would do collaboration with others, because it's important to have the consensus. And yes, sometimes you have to make that decision because you're the leader and you have to say, okay, this is how we're going to do it. But if you allow people to input, if you allow to have everybody's decision and together you make it together as a team, it's a lot better, a lot better.
You're emphasizing a lot about the team.
Yes.
So a leader cannot be a leader without a team, without
Right.
a good team, right?
Right.
So is that what makes, to have a good team,
Mhm.
that's what makes a leader an exceptional leader in the end?
Yes. Because if you look at leadership and if you study leaders, a leader doesn't lead in a vacuum. You don't lead in an island. You are, if you look at the great leaders, right, some of the great leaders of this country, you surround yourself with people that basically are better than you, right? That you, and this is, it takes a thick skin. It takes you knowing your purpose, knowing your integrity, knowing your values, and imparting that wisdom to the people in your team, because what you want to do is have those people rise up to where you are, because one day you're not going to be there anymore. And the key to that is, again, purpose, aligning your purpose, aligning everybody's purpose together. And this is also part of the culture within an organization. It has to do a lot with culture, an open environment where you're not afraid to give an opinion, right? Or to give something to do, in a better way, because you're an open-minded leader. Another thing that I did, which would be great besides surveys, is I would have suggestion boxes. So you have a suggestion box. And this I got from a long time ago when I was in college and I worked for one of the best organizations here that no longer exists. It was American Bankers Insurance Company. And what they did at that time is if you had a process that you could put in as a suggestion to lower the cost or create more productivity, you would get a bonus. So in the schools, you don't really give bonuses, but there's all kinds of things that you can do, right? You can bring, like a cookie platter, or you can have, something special for that individual. You can showcase them for their great ideas and their innovation. So another thing I would do is put suggestion boxes. How can we do it better? And the other thing I would always tell all my staff is don't come to me with a problem unless you also come with a solution. So this allowed open-ended conversations instead of having people come and complain, because as a leader, a lot of times you're either a mom or a dad, right? Everybody comes to come. That's fine. You have a problem, bring me a solution. And together then we work it out. And a lot of times I would totally look at that viewpoint and change things.
I'm not sure they're always going to have a solution with the problem, but we can talk about it together. That's the point, right? That's the point of discussing it together.
Yes, that's the point. Having open-ended conversations and allowing that person to share their opinion, share their ideas, share their creativity. This is all part of this leadership that we're talking, purposeful leadership, so that the person feels valued, right? You feel that you matter, that you matter.
Actually involved in the organization.
Yes, and here's another thing that really I learned, that a lot of times your employees don't know what's going on in your head, right? You don't know that your boss has called you and has put a lot of pressure on you to do something that is it's going to be difficult, and you're navigating those waters, and you don't want to burden your employees. So when they come and you have these open, authentic conversations, then they then can understand what you have to be going through. So then it's not that they take the burden, but you share in the decisions. You share in that the stress of having to move forward in a way where it's new. So everybody has a buy-in, and it's about empathy. It's about compassion. It's about authenticity.
Also, I think it's very important to transmit and share this strategy of the school, of the company, whatever it is, with the employees.
Yes.
Because otherwise they will feel lost and without purpose again. They don't know where they're going, what we're going to do next.
Yes.
Like, I think it's very important to share the strategy of a company with, again, talking everybody together.
Yes.
We go back to communication, to being transparent with the team and build conversation, right?
Yes, and build trust. And you said something very important, Sarah, and that's communication. And some leaders, because we were groomed in the leadership era of autocratic leadership, they don't know how to communicate. It's important to communicate with your team. And another tip I'm going to give you is start small. Start with maybe 2 or 3 people within your organization that know, like, and trust you, and you trust them, and start having these conversations, because then it's a ripple effect, right? You bring them in, and then you have these 3 people maybe like lead teams. And one of the things that I would always do within my organization is I would have these teacher leaders that I had then lead my teams with other teachers, because it wasn't me sharing the information. It was my teacher leaders sharing the information. And many of my teacher leaders are now principals or higher than principals because of the skills that they got. And now I'm not saying that I was phenomenal. It's just that I learned, because, like you said, you get challenges as a leader. You realize what's the best way to move forward with those challenges, and you learn on the job. We all learn on the job.
That's the biggest lesson. You learn on the job.
You learn on the job.
That's the lesson.
Yes.
All right. So let's see again if anybody has any questions for us, for Professor Cheli. Yeah, we have one. Let's give us just 1 second. We're tapping into the questions.
This is so exciting, a live virtual class.
It's a live.
All over the world.
Our first open class. We're going to have a few more in the next following months. So let's see who has a question. You speak louder because we don't hear you. Right. While we tap into the question, let's go back to some. You have some more tips and
Yes.
a practical example. Let's put the theory into practice.
Yes.
You have some example that.
So you're sitting there today and you're listening to this conversation, and
Right.
it starts getting you to think, how can you maybe start leading in a different way and tapping into your purpose? So you walk into, I know that, your school or your organization, and so you start thinking about what it is that you can do. So there's a lot of things you can do, and we're going to start small. Maybe you can do a survey. That's one thing. And in the survey, have open-ended questions. So one of the things that I would do is the open-ended questions that I would do at the end of the year, because I wanted to get a pulse for the organization and how we did, is what was one of the best things that you felt was done this year in the school? Then the other question would be, what is something that you would have done differently and why? Because you also want to see, okay, maybe we did something that didn't work. So what was it? And how would my team, how would that individual think that we could do it differently? And another thing I would do is I would do a question on vision. Where would you like for the school to go next year? Like what would you like for us to do? Because every year I would get themes and we would do themes. And so this is, I would get input, I would get data. So one thing is do surveys. You get a lot of data that way. The second thing that you can do is think about the people within your organization that are always there. Now, this is the key, because a lot of times you have people that are always there and that are working with you, but what about the quiet people that never show up?
Mm-hmm.
I want you to bring in those quiet people and have those coaching conversations with them, because I was able to get some of my best teacher leaders from the quiet ones, right, that were thinking about maybe going into leadership, but they were like shy. So I brought them in, I had open conversations with them, open-ended like coaching questions, and I realized, wow, one of them had even gone and had their master's, was even finishing a doctorate in educational leadership. So you have to have these conversations to know your staff. So that's the second thing. The third thing I want you to also know is that every year is a new year, right? And even if you're in the middle of the year, you can come in and you can have a meeting and say, okay, this is what my vision is. I'd like to maybe get a committee of people that want to work on some creative ways of doing maybe one thing that you want to look into doing. And start a committee. Let your teachers be the ones to bring you the information. You don't have to do it. I would always do committees. Start a committee and then have them go out there, have them research, have them do everything, bring it to you, and then have them implement it. Have them teach the other teachers. I would do this a lot. And it's a game changer, because then those teacher leaders then are the ones that bring the organization together, and you tie in that purpose, that vision, that value. Very important. So I gave you 3.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the question, if we have any. Can you share some of the strategies to make a good team? That's a good question.
It's an excellent question. And I do have a situational, because when I was put as a principal my first year, I was in a school that had a revolving door for principals, right? Every 2 years, the principal would go. And the team that was there, they were disillusioned. So the first thing that I did is I brought in an outside person to do what is called facilitative leadership. And facilitative leadership. And what that is they came in with, we needed to move the organization. The morale was low. People were like, oh, here's another principal. She's going to be gone in another year. Like, they were like putting bets on, okay, let's see how long she stays.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, so we brought them in. And what we did, you need to have someone from the outside, even if it's another colleague from another school, or, someone that is distanced from you. You can't do it as a leader. So we brought in this outside person, and we did a full day where people would just share their feelings, right? Oh, well, I don't like the way things were done. And we would write them. We would take those long pieces of paper. We created teams, we created questionnaires. And this is how we started moving the organization. So from this exercise that we got, like, what are the things that are working? What are the things that aren't working? Why are they not working? And what would you do differently? 4 questions. What are the things that are working? what is not working, why, and what would you do differently. So we had a full day session and we got all of this information and then we broke it down. And then from there, I started doing individual coaching conversations. And from there, I then brought in my teacher leaders that helped me move the organization. Now, I want everybody to know that not everybody's going to be on board. And you might have to have those difficult conversations with those people that are always being very negative, and have them and be authentic and say, you know, I see that you're not happy here. Tell me why, right? And maybe it's time for them to go to another school or to go somewhere else and say, look, I will help facilitate that for you. But you can't make everybody happy, but they have to be aligned and be with purpose. And one of the things that I realized, because you asked me, what are some of the challenges that you had? That was one of my biggest challenges, right? One of many, but that was like my first big one, because you can't make everybody happy. So what you do is you get, it's like the cream, right? You get the people that are going to move that organization and help you move forward. And the other ones eventually will either stay and conform or they'll go, right?
Yeah.
So you have to stay very positive. You have to stay on an even keel. And the way to do that is to take care of yourself and give back to you. Because if you show up at work and you're exhausted and tired, it's not going to work.
And it shows.
It totally shows, and everybody knows.
Right. Let's see if we have any other questions from our participants from home. We do have a question. Let's see. No, we don't. All right. So thank you so much for being here. We're going to wrap this up. We have a question? We do have a question.
A couple of questions.
Wrapping it up, we have another question. Sorry, how can we make leadership work
in a corrupt system? It's very difficult. You have to be very savvy. You have to use a lot of psychology, and you have to always put the main thing first. And the main thing are the kids. The kids, because we're talking education, right? The kids and the teachers. So to me, happy teachers, happy kids, happy parents. That's what I always used to say. So my teachers were very important to me. My children were very important to me. And it just depends. But when you live with your integrity, when you live with your values, and you always do what's best for the organization, which in this case, we're talking about teaching kids and having teachers that come to work ready to share their passion and their wisdom in teaching those children, then that is a way of being able to move forward. That's the best advice that I can give you, because when you're in your integrity and you do what's right by those children, because you know you're growing the future educational leaders. It's very important to keep that in mind.
I agree. I think the main focus not to ever lose is the student.
Yes,
that's what
always.
We say here, and you're like, that's the main reason. That's our main purpose, is to make the student not only happy, but completely like wholesome.
Yes, absolutely. And you have to take that perspective, because you're there to teach. You're there to impact education, and everything else doesn't matter.
That's right.
Everything else doesn't matter. Yes.
That's the main focus. All right. So let's see if you have any other question. I don't think so at this point. We do have one more question.
Okay.
We can go on and on with the questions if you guys want. Just keep writing and texting on the chat box.
I love questions.
Right.
Yes.
That's much more interesting. Let's see who is the next question. What can leader do when others don't share the same vision with the leader? Right? Okay.
What can a leader do when others
don't share the same vision?
Okay. So this happens a lot, and it happened to me with the situational that I was telling you, that I brought in the facilitative leader to do the facilitative leadership and to start having people lead the organization. So what's really important to know is what we were talking about earlier, which is, what is the main thing? The children, the student. The student is the main thing. And when you lead with that in mind, and you take everything that you have, your values, your core vision, what you need to do within that organization, and you lay it all out, and everybody knows, right? I used to do an exercise every year where I would put the vision and the mission, and everybody posted it in their classroom, because it was the child, that student learning, that was important. Then as a leader, you might have to have these difficult conversations one-on-one with a person, and if they're not happy, then you have to help them either go somewhere else, or they have to, you know, basically they will in turn either leave or they'll comply. It's happened to me, right? It's happened to me. But if you focus on the positive and on the student and on learning, everything takes its place. You can't go down to the level of that person that doesn't see the vision of helping a child learn, helping a student succeed, helping a teacher teach. That has to be the main thing.
Very important.
Yes.
All right. Any more questions? Yes?
How do you lead a religiously infested system where every leadership strategies are given a religious connotation?
Sorry, can you read that again? It's just too long. How can you
How
speak
can you
louder,
lead
please?
it?
How can you lead in a religiously integrated system where every leadership strategies are given a religious connotation?
Okay, so we're tapping into religion
How
here.
can you lead in a very religious system where every religious strategy is tapping into religious connotation? Okay,
Right.
so my first question to this leader is, are you aligned with those values? Because it's very important.
It goes back to values.
It goes back to that. If you're not aligned, I mean, I would thinking that someone would be a leader within an environment, an organization like that, whose values were aligned. And if not, then maybe that's not the right place for you to lead. This is the best thing that I can say. Because if you're in a religious organization, you know that you're going to be, you know, doing religious strategies, religious activities. That to me, and we go back to the student learning.
The question says that if the country's system is a religious system,
Right.
And how to have leadership strategies without the religious connotation.
I don't know how to answer that because
we have to share the question here with our viewers. Can you read it loudly, please? Read it.
It says, how do you lead in a religiously infested system?
Okay, how do you lead in a religiously infested system
Where every leadership strategies
where every leadership strategies
are given religious connotations?
Are given religious connotation. All right.
Okay, leadership strategy given religious connotation. Well, what I'm going to say to you again is we keep the main thing, and that's the student. And we're there to teach the student. We're there to share with our teachers what we need to do, which is to teach. So that's the best answer that I can give because, again, when you're dealing with children, we need to make sure that we're moving them forward in an educational environment and an educational barometer. As a leader within an organization such as you're describing, I hope that you have time to reflect, to take time for yourself, and to connect with your own values and your purpose, because that will help align yours with the organization.
Maybe I can be wrong, but what if, like, if I don't believe in a religion, not part of that religion,
Right.
and I don't align with those values and strategies, maybe I just have to tap out.
Right. That's why it's important to understand what is your purpose. Either maybe it's to do something else or to start your own school. You know, you have choices, right? We all have choices, and it just depends what we want to do in life.
Right.
But it goes back to purpose, vision, leadership, alignment of everything. And I agree with you, Sara. You know, we have to be happy in what we do.
The key.
Yes. Yes, that is the key to be an exceptional leader. And I want to thank that participant for sharing that question because it's an important one. And you can even take religion out and put other adjective, other words there, because it's not only, it could be anything else, right? again, if we're not aligned with who we are, with the values within the organization that we're leading, then we need to take a moment and reflect as to the why that we're doing this. So
Great
yes.
answers. I think we've learned a lot today. I hope this has been interesting for everybody. We're going to wrap it up now. Thank you so much, Cheli, for being
Thank
here.
you.
I hope we're going to have you again.
Yes, I'd like to come back, and thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here.
Of course, it was an honor to learn from you. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye, and see you next time.
Thank you.